Hello, everybody. Welcome to my latest episode of Shouse in the House. I'm your host, literally Heather, and I have with me today Brian and John, who are and what that means. I'm going to kind of get a little bit of background. Brian, from you first, talk to me a little bit about where you started and how you kind of got into this program.
Sure. My name is Brian Orlitz, founder and CEO of ReDo Voting. My background, I'm proud to say, is a former Army infantry guy and got into technology past the military, specifically in large infrastructure, network, cloud kind of things, very large projects. And it's kind of led us to this place where we're at now, where we've culminated some skill sets and found a problem we can definitely fix. And so our entire company's pretty much, with the exception of about 2 or 3 people, are all veterans. And then
That's very awesome.
Yeah. And so my responsibility is to get out in the world and make dust, and then John comes along and cleans up the mess.
John, please go ahead and give us a little bit of background on you. I know that you have an extensive, long career, and so I'd love to hear a little bit more about you and your time and how you got here.
Okay. Well, my name is John Rogers. I spent 31 years in the Army and kind of got to know Brian through that community. I have been retired since 2017, and during that time, I've worked in the defense industry. Currently, I'm a junior ROTC instructor, but my specialty when I was in the Army was operations. And so when Brian decided to get this effort going, he gave me a call, and I've been helping him to operationalize it for the last 2 years.
Sure.
And we have managed to gain some traction over the last 3 months or so with ReDo Voting.
Okay, so let's get into ReDo Voting and what that is. Obviously, if you look at what happened in 2020, there were a lot of, shall we call them, anomalies with the process of voting. Without trying to be a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, I want to try really hard to avoid that. The idea that our elections are secure is a fallacy. There is a lot of room for user error, meaning the people, and I think Joe Biden himself has said it numerous times, it doesn't matter what the votes are, it matters who counts the votes. So that's an incredibly concerning comment to be coming from a politician as a citizen who believes in the system that we have as far as a constitutional republic is concerned. So can you walk me through a little bit? And I have the graphic that you had sent me, Brian. So let's start with how easy it is. And then I want to get into some of the more specifics, because I think one of the things that I worry about, and I'm going to play devil's advocate with you guys, I think this process is incredibly awesome, but you're going to have a lot of people that are going to push back against you. So I'm going to be those people today. And kind of fight with you on some of the things that I think you will get as far as arguments are concerned. So talk about the system and how it works and how you guys kind of developed this.
John? Actually, Brian, before you do that, let me come out of the gate with a little bit of an adjustment on philosophy. We recognize that there is a problem, but the problem has got to be one that everybody agrees on. Election integrity challenges go back all the way to the 1840s in the United States. But it goes back and forth. One side says the other did something. The first side said they did something. But the real problem is about the perception of election integrity and faith in the electoral system. So that's what we tried to address. Our approach to this is completely nonpartisan. We do not care at all who actually wins. All we care about is a clean, universally accessible, absolutely transparent, and secure system for doing this. Our intent is to return the voice of the people to the people so that the decisions are made on the forum it's supposed to be made.
I agree. And I guess maybe I kind of misspoke. I think after the 2020 election, a lot of voters become disenfranchised, myself included. I voted in every single election since I was able to vote. And this, the primary that happened in here in Indiana, it just happened last week. It was so unimportant to me that I forgot to vote. Like I didn't even pay attention to it. And that's, for me, that's so disheartening. And now like I feel guilty about it, right? Like I'm like, oh man, I didn't do what I feel like I should do. Um, but it's because I feel like my vote really does not matter at all anymore. Um, so okay, now Brian, please go into, I agree with you, John. So thank you for that.
Well, the system itself is very simple. How simple? It's so simple that if you can work a scratch-off lottery ticket, you can use the system. Also, this system is as secure as a scratch-off lottery ticket. So what I would throw back to you is, when's the last time you've seen a lottery get hacked? You haven't, because it
Never.
hasn't happened. So our system is very simple, open source code. So there's no secret. When the Secretary of the state, any state, decides to pop the key, as they will do, people themselves can run the election themselves. They can do the math themselves. It's open source. All identities hidden, of course, but real results, real time, every time. No machines.
Okay. So I'm going to walk through this graphic with you.
Good.
Step one, pick up an official ballot from any one of these locations. You have gas station, supermarket, or civic building listed. So civic building meaning like a clerk's office, a church, or not a church, I'm sorry, a school, any of those types of locations?
So here's how easy, this is so easy. Your state doesn't have to pass any new laws, do any more procurement contracts, because we already exist within currently existing procurement contracts for all 50 states. If they buy lottery tickets, which they 45 or 50 do, then we come off the same printers. We're from the same budget. So there's no problem. And I'm getting at something here. Are you seeing a theme? There is no change in your life.
Right.
So what's going to happen is the state says, wow, we love the system. So the next week they said, how do we have it? Well, next week when you purchase your lottery tickets, your scratch-off lottery tickets, just add a budget line item for your ballots. And then you have a new, so the same people that deliver the lottery tickets can take them to the places where you can, let's call it what it is, buy alcohol, cigarettes, any place you've got to give an ID. Same regulations for voting registration for voters. So no different. So it's in your face all the time. So if the state says government building, that could be any government building that's got a web browser and a camera. That could be, you could pick up you could register to vote in a convenience store. I'm not saying that we're going to advocate that, but you can, because we exist within every state's election laws. We run concurrently with them from the start. So it's up, the short answer to your question could have been, well, if the state wants you to pick it up in a library or wherever, they can. But the reality is this fits into life as you know it already.
So I want to ask one more qualifying question on this real fast. When you go to the location to pick these up, you had mentioned in the next part, the clerk scratches off the pad under the state seal to reveal a barcode, scans it, scans the barcode on the back of your state issued ID. So here's where I'm going to come with my first two, I guess, objections.
Sure.
The first thing is that scanning system, what they're using to scan. If I go to a library, so are you guys going to have to implement more hardware into some of these locations for this scanning process? What does that look like?
In fact,
I can answer that question.
Please do.
Okay. The scanning it's a simple barcode scan that's tied into a centralized network. Anywhere transactions take place, this could happen.
Okay.
No.
Second objection that is the biggest one across the platform, across the board. You're being discriminatory because you're demanding that people utilize an ID. What if they can't afford it or they can't obtain one?
It's also the biggest myth.
Yes, I don't disagree with you, but that's the argument. So what is the response here?
Here's the deal. Everybody has a state issued ID, even if they're homeless, however they're disenfranchised. And if they don't have a state issued ID, they can get one free. Now, here's where we tie in, and not only do we tie-in, we clean up the voting rolls. So all those dead people stop voting. Here's the deal. That first barcode down in the lower left, that could be a government employee, that can be a clerk, whatever the state is cool with. They scan that, and guess what they just banged up against? The motor voter real ID system, because you probably got a star on your driver's license, right? That's a real
I
ID.
haven't upgraded mine yet. It's not
okay.
mandated yet.
You're still in the state system. So what's going to
Yes.
happen is the clerk's going to scan that one. Then he or she's going to scan the back of your license, and then screen's going to pop up where you before would have said, yes, I want to tip this person, I want to sign this or whatever. You just confirm your information. You put a PIN code if the state wants it. You press submit. Boom. You're now a hash in the system. Your name's gone. You're registered to vote, and you just made sure nobody can vote in your name and no more dead people can vote. So from that point on, you don't do anything with it until you get to that next scratch off on voting day. And you could be on the space station in the bathroom with that, and you could vote.
Okay, I lied. I have one more a
Keep
caveat to this. So the illegal immigrants who are issued state identifications, how do you prevent them from participating in this?
Again, same deal. They still have, that's where it gets bad for them, because they still have to register to vote. If the state allows illegals to vote, that's on the state.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, that's an important point to make.
It is.
We are an election integrity company, not a voter integrity company. Voter integrity is a responsibility of the state. And
Gotcha.
this system can be tailored to fit any scenario that the state wants to put forward. If the state wants to have no ID required to vote, okay, we can work with that. But the bottom line is that every registration will have one vote and one vote only associated with it.
Okay.
So ballot harvesting is a thing of the past. It cannot be done.
That's right.
Okay. That is very awesome. I'm very
If you want this
excited
thing
so
to
far.
work right down the line, where you have absolutely impenetrable security, then it's up to the state to tighten up the voter requirements.
Okay.
But we can work with anything down to, hey, you want to vote? Come on in and vote. But if you want it to work exactly the way we say, you got to tighten up the voter registration piece.
Well, and it kind of forces, so here's the really interesting thing, right? Because of the way government works. Obviously, it should work from the bottom up. We should have more control in a centralized, like in our own backyard, than the federal government has over anything that I do or say on a daily basis.
Agreed.
That's unfortunately not how things work. But I think that one of the huge benefits of this program is if the people demand it, and you can get some of these, local election officials to put pressure on some of these county officials that put pressure on these state officials, you can have states that completely buy into a program like this. So I'm really excited about this. I know it seems like I'm not, because I'm arguing on the other side of things, but I want to keep going. So
it's good. And this is also a point worth making. What you just said is a big deal, because for us, we see this as a states' rights issue. So this is a state thing. In fact, to your point, we've also had an incredible amount of success with the traction at the grassroots level. We've already had several mayors here around the Atlanta area, and one county commissioner said, come on, we get it. And like John said earlier, you could pop off a real-time election with the people, for the people, as quick as the local governments want with this. And it's all real-time.
Okay, I'm going to get into some of that after we get through this graphic, because I want to talk about where you guys are at right now with implementation, but let's hold off on that yet. Okay, so I have gone to the store. I have accessed my ballot, right? I've gotten my little scratch off. So scratch off the first gray square. You reveal the QR code. You use the coin, scratch it off. Now it's time to register for my profile, right? So you had mentioned the hash. Does that hash process start after I've completed this first square?
It does. You become a hash. Yes. A SHA-3 hash, to be specific.
Here's the next part where I feel like you guys may push up against some pushback. Older individuals have no clue what a hash is or what that even means. So, in the most layman, dumbed down terms possible, explain to me what happens when I register for this. Because you still have people that won't buy things on Amazon because they're afraid all of their information is now available for the whole world to use against them. So talk to me about how secure this hash system is.
Yeah. Well, first, I'll let John. John can answer if he likes, but I want you to know the name of that infographic is called the 90-year-old graphic for the exact reason. Because that was the number one. That was our priority: is how would a 90-year-old woman do this?
Right.
And that's the process.
Okay, let me see if I can simplify it for the Luddites out there like me. Everybody is familiar with the Word program, right?
Yes.
Okay,
I mean,
so
I would imagine
you type out something in a Word program, right? And then you erase it. Where's that information?
it's gone.
It's gone. Exactly. You haven't saved it. It's gone. You back up. It's just gone. This system works on an internet browser. When you hit submit, it's the same thing as erasing all that information. The only information that goes forward is encoded with the most current secure hash algorithm uh, technology available. And because we utilize a one-way hash, there is no way of getting into that information. Once it's out there, there's no remnant on the website. And all that anybody out there can know from that point forward is that it is a legitimate, legal vote. Your identity is completely disassociated with it once you hit submit.
And it will always be mathematically provably you.
That's what I was getting ready to say. So one of the things that I've always hated about voting is that I can't go back, a year from now and be like, who did I vote for in that race or in that election? And I think, and I know I'm kind of skipping ahead in the infographic, but I love the idea where I can actually keep track of like the decisions that I've made as a voter, and it shows me explicitly, yes, your vote was counted. Here's who you voted for in all of these things. So we'll get to that. I'm sorry, I'm totally skipping ahead. Okay, so I set up my information, and now we are encrypted. We are in the system. Everything is good to go. Step 2 is election day. So now it's time for me to vote. Here's my next thing that I wonder about and I'm concerned about. What if between step 1 and step 2, I have lost my card?
Go get another one.
So it doesn't matter, just as long as I have that QR code, it doesn't matter which card I'm using, because I guess maybe I'm not understanding. When I went to get the card the first time,
right,
the clerk scanned the card and scanned my ID.
Right.
Now that's tied together. If now I go back and she scans a second card and scans my ID, does that eliminate that first identification? Because, okay.
Remember, we said math.
You can get all the cards you want, but think of it as driving a nail. Okay, if you have 100 hammers and you hammer that nail in with one hammer, it doesn't matter which hammer you use.
Right.
Once you've hammered that nail in, that one nail is in there. It doesn't matter how many hammers you have.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yes.
Each registration gets one vote. Doesn't matter how many ballots you get. Once you vote on one of those cards, you can register all of them you want to. You can get it activated. You can register. All that stuff. Once you have voted on that ballot, nobody else can vote on that registration until the next election.
Okay. So if someone finds that ballot that I used before, that QR code, it doesn't matter.
Nope.
No.
Okay. That's what I needed to know. Next, I use the camera, and then it presents me with my ballot on my cell phone. I have the ability to just go through, I vote, and then I hit send. I just voted, and that goes in another hash code. It goes out. It's encrypted. It's done.
Well, it recognizes the last hash. That's how your
and
ballot
ties
is
it
assembled.
together. Yeah.
On the map.
Right.
Okay. And then the next step, it's got review, where you can scratch off. You can use that QR code to review anything that you've done up to that point. And it says in here, it gives you access it's unlimited, like for
Correct.
like the history of your vote. Okay.
Correct.
And you can
And
print it
you're
off
the
as a
only one who
PDF.
has that access.
You're
Yeah.
the only one.
Unless you give somebody else that QR code, you're the only one who can ever see that. And it's a PDF printable format. So yes, you can print it out if you want to. But this is important. Once you have voted, your vote goes into a secure state run repository. So all you're doing is seeing it. You can't change it. You can't mess with it.
Right.
It's in there. You can confirm it. You're the only one who can confirm it. But once you voted, your vote's in there.
Okay. So let's talk about the state repository, because the process on the front end of things, as you guys have explained, is incredibly secure.
Mhm.
What about on the repository side? Is there any way to change the vote once it has left my hand? Is there any way that someone at the state repository could make changes?
So
No.
that's the amazing question. The short answer, absolutely not. They would be in jail so quick, because this is not hosted on a .com. This is on a .gov. Not only is it on a .gov, it's in the lottery infrastructure for the state, the most secure infrastructure in the world, hands down. That's where our
And
system resides.
no Russia, no Iran, no one
Not a chance.
foreign entity
John, what
can
do you
get
like
in
to
and
say to this
hack any of
question?
this.
John's got the great answer for this question, which is usually,
Well,
they could do it, but it would take, the earth would die a heat
yeah.
death before they change one vote.
Everything. Well, here's the thing. We present ourselves as unhackable, but in truth, given enough computing power and enough time, everything is hackable.
Right.
To hack into even one vote in this repository, even one, would require all the computing power of a modern nation state and more time than the universe has been in existence
It seems
to get
pretty
into
secure to
one
me.
vote. Yeah.
It is. And then when the
And
election's
all,
over,
So,
it's,
okay.
if you get in there, if you actually get in there, all you're going to see is a bunch of legal votes. That's all you see. There are no identities associated with it. You can't get into any of the votes. So if somebody wanted to come in and start eliminating votes, that's kind of stupid, because you have no idea who they voted for.
Right.
You have
Let's
there's no way of telling.
let's talk about, and Brian, I had mentioned this to you in our conversation previously, but let's talk about absentee ballots.
yes.
The military. So one of the things that I had asked you was the state issued IDs, like what actually qualifies as that. And I asked you if CAT cards work, and the answer was yes, they do. The follow-up question that I had for you is absentee ballots. You have a lot of overseas military that vote, and I feel like sometimes the elections are decided before those votes even make it into our hands at this point. And that's incredibly sad, because I mean, it's almost as if the people who the vote should count for the most, it never does.
Correct.
And then you move forward to here, right? So absentee ballots have been abused significantly in our election system the way that it is right now, where you have, like you had mentioned earlier, ballot harvesting, where you go in to a nursing home and you start doing some of that stuff. So talk to me a little bit about how absentee ballots, and then how do we eliminate ballot harvesting, where somebody doesn't just get a stack of these cards and then go into a nursing home and use that.
Yep. I'm happy to answer that question, but I want John to answer, because this is kind of how we've gotten where we are. He'll answer it from a perspective of a senior leader. I'll answer it from a perspective of somebody that's street level going, yep, we're going to get you in there, you're going to vote, and and why it's important. Okay. So, and John's got a much better command perspective of how it affects the military than I do. John,
Okay, in order to vote, you need an activated ballot and an internet browser. Those two things.
That's it.
You have to have the ballot sent to you. And only one ballot is going to work for you. When you order the ballot, ideally, this is how it should work. You prove your identity. When they confirm your registration, they will send you a link where you go and you establish a 4-digit PIN. So when they mail this ballot to you, you do it exactly the same way anybody else does in real time. On election day, you scratch off your QR code, you go in, If it requires a 4-digit PIN, you punch in your 4-digit PIN or you can't go forward. And since
Right.
you're the only one who knows that 4-digit PIN, nobody else can use your ballot. Once your registration is voted on, nobody else can vote on that registration. So it's really no different than being anywhere else. Now with the military, same idea.
Right. Now, okay,
So
so
voting
let's
officers
say,
will have ballots. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, like, I'm thinking like, Iraq, Afghanistan. We had tons of people when they're like, so internet wasn't exactly the easiest thing to get access to sometimes, depending on where you were located. Sometimes I'm talking early on before a lot of the fobs were set up. I saw your face, Colonel. So the later it obviously was, but um what does that process look like there? Like, how am I scanning a barcode if I'm in fucking Ukraine at this point, moving forward? Does that make sense?
I understand the question. I can tell you that the military doesn't move without communications in place.
Okay. And that's fair.
Um,
I guess
yeah,
I'm trying to advocate as somebody who would make arguments against you guys for why this process wouldn't work.
We love it.
Um, it's not necessarily that I think that it won't or that I don't know what you're saying. It's just I want to make sure I fight with you a little bit.
Of course.
Um, so one of the last things that you guys have on this infographic before we move forward with some of the other stuff, it said some, not all states require in-person validation. Indiana is a state where you must prove your identity before you can vote. I don't know that we require in person. I mean, we do absentee ballots here, but it said, if required, take your ballot to any active polling station in your state. Poll worker will scratch off the final square to reveal the QR code. Poll worker scans the QR code, confirming your vote was legally cast. So is that just it? Do you know what states where you would, even though you've been through the whole process, you would still have to go and be verified? Do you know which states those are?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. If a state requires it, then it could be like a drive-up COVID testing center. You drive up, that person, what happens, and I think this is also important to note that I didn't bring up before. One of the most important things about this system is it's chain of custody related. Every step of the way is a chain of custody. So in this case, if the state requires in-person voting, or if they require that kind of validation in person, literally no more than a poll worker under a tent, camera, scanner, whatever, could be their own. And then that last QR code may be on a perforated piece. So if we want to have physical proof of the ballots as well, then you just drop that in a secure box, and now you have, so and that closes the chain of custody front to back.
And again, I mean, I realize this isn't your all's responsibility. This is something that's on the state, and we should be advocating for differences. So let's talk about that with you guys. Let's talk about what kind of traction have you gained? What kind of pushback have you received? I know, and I don't know. I know some of that. I don't know if you can talk about that yet. So, in the context in which you can speak about it, I'd like to know. I'd really like to know who's giving you pushback on it, because that tells me who doesn't want a secure election. So talk to me a little bit about that if you guys don't care.
Man, that's actually legit.
Before we get into that, hold on. Before we get into that, there is an important philosophy that needs to be paired with what you said before. The next evolution of elections is digital. That's just the fact. The reason that we have set the system up the way that we have is to facilitate a transition to that. There are going to be states that are going to require in person, but it's superfluous. It doesn't really make any difference on the system. But you can't go and tell a state you have to do things differently now. So we've set the system up to be able to accommodate any concerns that the state has using the system.
Right.
We will eventually get to the point where the technology is totally trusted from end to end, because we employ secure document technology that can't be broken. We employ digital security measures and hashes that can't be broken. We ensure chain of custody, but some folks look at it as being too good to be true. So we lead them down the path by using their procedures.
Yeah. So I when I said we need to change it, I meant the people, not
Yeah,
you guys as a company.
I
So
agree. We agree. We're just no.
Oh yeah.
We're just a tool.
No, what I'm saying is we get it. There are people who are going to
yeah.
go, this is evil. They're trying to steal elections. I get that. I understand that people are going to be misinformed about this, and
Right.
there are going to be certain people out there who recognize that their keys to power are going to be challenged.
Yes.
And so a lot of people are going to do everything they can to try to stop free, clear, and transparent voting. But we can accommodate that.
Yeah.
Mhm. So to pick up on that and gently answer that question, um, we used the John Lewis Voting Rights Act as a guide here. Okay.
Okay.
Um, guess who won't talk to us? So now that said, yeah, that's pretty diabolical. But that said, I can also unfortunately say an elected official used the phrase keys to power, and you don't want to do that to us from the other side. So
Right.
Yeah.
we are truly looking at this as fight as we're going to fix you both. And I'm saying we're going to fix you both, meaning
I
if you're
know what
open
you
and
mean.
honest, we're down with you. But if you're not, so we don't care what letters beside your name.
Right.
So
Yeah. And
far,
I
most of the traction, I'm sorry,
no, go ahead.
so far, most of the traction we've gotten have been from conservative outlets.
Full
And
on.
full disclosure, a lot of us are politically fairly conservative. But
Yeah.
the bottom line is this is not a partisan effort. This has nothing to do with which party you're in.
Right.
This has everything to do with making sure that the right people are in charge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the
And I
right
think
people
that
are defined by who, well, the right people are defined by who the voters want.
yeah.
Very
Good
true.
And
governance can come from either side of the aisle. And once upon a time, partisan politics were about different routes to the best possible outcome.
Right.
And that's where we want to return to.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that it's been incredibly, like I said, it's been disheartening. And it feels you get kind of like a defeatist feeling that you can't change it, that nothing is or ever because I shared this with Brian and kind of what prompted me to really want to have the two of you on. Um, the idea that an election was had and that there were questions, right? Like we know certainly, like let's take um people who had moved out of state. That was one other question I had, and I'm really glad I just thought of that. I'll come back to that in a second. People who have moved, right? So they're no longer registered in their specific location, or people who are dead, or Dominion changing votes, or whatever. Like, let's remove all of that.
Yep.
You had local election officials violate constitutional law by not going through their state legislatures for the election
Right.
and used COVID as an excuse to do it.
They did.
And that's a huge problem for me as a citizen. You know, whenever Texas implemented that, the request to the Supreme Court, and you had 24 states signed on
That's
to
right.
that lawsuit. Whenever that happened, I was like, thank goodness there are some people who are looking out for those of us who feel disenfranchised by what happened.
Mhm.
And afterwards, and I mean, at least speaking from my perspective, I don't know that this is necessarily the case, but it doesn't feel like Arizona, New Mexico, Georgia, which is where you guys are, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, it doesn't feel like those states have done much from a state legislature perspective to shore up some of those problems that they had in the last election. And here we are 2 years later, ready for, some big moves as far as the Senate and the House of Representatives are concerned. And I don't feel like things have been taken care of, certainly not for the 2024 election.
Mhm.
So I what you guys are doing, I think, is really important. I do want to go back really quick to the movement thing. So I let's say my state issued ID and my voter registration still reflect that I live in Atlanta, but I have actually moved to Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work within your all system? How do you eliminate that?
Assuming you got your new state driver's license when you moved to Louisville, you're done. Literally.
Okay.
Even the day
But
of
what
the
if
election.
I haven't?
Well, then you'll be voting in your home state. Again, like John said, we're a voting integrity company.
Sure.
So if you moved and you followed the rules, usually you have to get a new driver's license in a new state within 30 days. Because
Right.
of the currently existing motor voter laws in the real ID system in all 50 states, when you get that new license, want to register to vote? Sure. But if you forget to, you can go the day of, convenience store, whatever. Again, that process that's on that infographic is what happens.
Cool.
Doesn't matter. No effect whatsoever.
Awesome.
Well, the other nifty thing about this, though, is when it is fully implemented, and it will be at some point. It's like when computers first came out, a lot of people said, "Oh, I'll never get a computer." Well, guess what? The world now runs on computers.
Yeah.
The same thing is going to happen with this system. And when it does, you can register to vote in one state, but then when you move, you go in and you're confirming your registration information. You change your address, bink, it'll take you to the registration page in your new home. You put in your new address, all that's verified, and then you get to vote in your new place. You don't get to vote in your old place and your new place,
Right.
but you get to vote where you just moved to.
Right.
One person, one vote.
One vote.
That's the model.
Pure transparency as well.
I have one more question, and I will edit this out if this is not something that you guys want to answer. I try really hard to be transparent, though. Obviously, as a taxpayer and as a citizen, when I start looking at things like a new system, talk to me about what the cost to the taxpayer is going to look like with this program.
That's one of our
What does
favorite
that
questions.
transition look like?
It's one of our favorite questions, and John can answer it far more eloquently than I can.
Okay. One of our major selling points is transparency. Yeah. So we're never going to ask you to edit anything out.
Awesome.
There was a study in 2017 that came out of MIT that showed the average cost per election per voter was $8.10. The only cost to the state is ballot procurement. That's $5 per ballot. At $5 per ballot, we're looking at a savings across the board of just under 40%.
Wow.
There's no equipment to buy. There's no machines. There's nothing like that. You need an internet browser and your ballot. Yeah.
Wow.
It is the best of all worlds.
Pretty awesome.
We advise that, and again, it's up to the state, but we would and will advise them. Why don't you put that back into social services so you can have the outreach to go take a stack of ballots to old folks home, drop them off. So, and those ballots are going to be delivered by the same workers that are already delivering the lottery tickets.
Yeah.
Nothing new to see here.
Voter integrity is the job of the state. That doesn't mean we're not willing to help them find the right way to do it.
Sure. Gosh, guys, I'm really excited about this. I'm super excited, Brian, that I got to meet you. John, now, Smolder, whatever you want to be called. I very much appreciate both of you taking the time to speak with me today. What is a good place? So I am assuming you guys are currently in the process of flirting with different states. Where is a place that somebody can get in touch with you guys if they are a state official and they're interested in this program?
Very simply enough, I'm Brian at ReDo Voting, and he's John at ReDo Voting. We will answer. And what I can tell you without divulging too much, again, this is probably something the Colonel can say better than I, but the traction we've received, you would be shocked. Well, I'll put it this way. Our ass has made it to Mar-a-Lago. That should tell you how well and we've been invited back. And what are we invited now, John, to? 8 states to meet governors and secretaries of states. We're going to the convention of attorneys general. All 50 of them are going to be there.
That's awesome.
That's
really awesome. You guys or Brian, you had mentioned a couple lineups that you had as far as some different shows that you guys are going on. Mm-hmm. Do you know the dates of those where people could tune in to see you guys?
We're working on securing them, and I'm not going to be dodgy here, but the nature of who's asked us to go on that show and who the shows are, we want to nail the dates down.
Okay,
Once we
that's
get-
fair. I just wanted to give people the opportunity to tune in case I didn't ask good enough questions, and they may want to learn more.
John,
So
what kind of bait can you throw out there about what we're doing on that?
Well, I can tell you that we have a number of shows, commitments secured. What we're working to do is lie down the dates
I
because we
figured.
have commitments, they have commitments. We're trying to get that lined up. But I'll tell you what we can do. On Twitter, we are at ReDo Voting, and as those dates come available, I'll post them on Twitter. So follow us at ReDo Voting, and you can get all the information you need.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with both of you. John, especially you driving and stuff. I appreciate you taking the time. And Brian, please stay in touch, guys. I look forward to seeing what you guys do
Absolutely.
anytime.
Heather, thank you. You're a pleasure to talk to. I mean, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you so
guys.
much, Heather.
You
Much
guys take
appreciated.
care.
All right.
See ya.
Okay. Bye-bye.